王宮の者たちには愛がない。
愛?
なぜそこで愛?
And that's the one time we're gonna use that clip. Believe me, if we used it every time this character said the word love, we're gonna wear that old lady out. Continuing right from where we left off last time, Tsurugi and Bringer managed to narrowly escape from Yaiba, who did at least manage to score a significant hit on the droid, you know, on top of everything else he had went through in that episode.
'Tis but a scratch.
Yeah, at this point, I'm totally convinced this guy is based off of the freaking Terminator. Oh, and also, their bike was running out of fuel because when it rains, it pours. Realizing how much trouble they were in, mostly because of his recklessness, Tsurugi tried to do what he could for his friend. And fortunately for them, they got some help from Kizakura and her friends in exchange for some more cookies. The final episode of Mahotsukai Precure in a nutshell. That said, they had come up with a rather clever plan by making it appear that they had escaped into the sewers rather than the one boat that was conveniently floating out in the river. What's with these droids? What, were they designed by Steve?
Ha 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 ha! Your costume is ridiculous!
Yeah, I remind y'all, Bringer was supposed to be the outdated model compared to them. I think something got lost between the generations. Anyway, Kizakura also offered to hook Tsurugi up with someone who could fix up Bringer. We were supposed to be in this big crossover film, but they decided to go with my daughter instead. Actually, Sora was this dude, who doesn't really share that many traits with the Precure of the Skies, you know, aside from color schemes. And Tsurugi would end up running into him after accidentally forgetting to tie Bringer's boat down. This led to them having a mini adventure as they passed through a river cavern.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
And yet still better Indiana Jones than Dial of Destiny. Anyway, yeah, I guess Sora and his village were supposed to be like the Chinatown of this world, with him, his brother Long, and Master Samohong clearly using those sorts of aesthetics. Hell, the old master was named after one of the more popular kung fu actors in Japan. Now, of course, I can't say whether or not these are good representations of Chinese characters, but I think they were pretty likable overall. Not to mention, as we'd soon see, Sora did have one of the better decks in this show, with him also being a Sword Eyes. Nah, dude, that's like a booster pack from a year prior. Y'all should be on like 19 by now. Also foreshadowing. Anyway, Sora, as stated earlier, didn't want to work on a royal palace droid, and Bringer was no exception. And while his earlier proclamation of love sounded like pretentious fluff, as it turned out, it did come from a kind of justified bit of prejudice. Gee, even in this fantasy world, AI is threatening to take everyone's gerbs. Not even really kidding, as this does seem to be like one of those themes that aged incredibly well after over a decade later, with the idea of government superpowers overtaking more menial tasks, and in turn making the lower class obsolete with the advancement of technology. And on top of that, the fact that these characters look like Chinese immigrants, and yeah, this was a show about a children's card game, right? Well, yes, of course it was, as Tsurugi challenged him to a game with Bringer's repair job on the line. And if it wasn't already obvious, he was the blue sword eye of light and Brow's counterpart. That said, while his name meant sky, as again Precure has already clarified for us, blue cards are more themed around water. Why the disparity between this character's name and his deck?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's honestly the best explanation I have. I mean, frankly, I'm more questioning why he's the only Chinese character with Japanese name. Anyway, the battle proper opened with both players exchanging some initial blows, though notably, Tsurugi held back on one of his attacks, possibly subtly hinting at him playing a little more cautiously after his loss to Yaiba, as one of his biggest missteps in that game was not having enough blockers and also giving him more cores to work with. And while this would actually pay off in the long run, it didn't stop Sora and his Tai Chi breathing from summoning his key spirit. It was here that we also saw the main gimmick of the blue deck, as while they do focus on power plays like fire, they don't focus on cards on the field, but rather in the deck, with Zoldner being capable of discarding the top 5 cards on the opponent's deck. Additionally, charges for the blue deck increased the number, resulting in Tsurugi needing to discard 7 cards. And if that wasn't enough, if there was at least one magic card amongst the cards discarded, Zoldner gained an extra symbol until the end of the battle, meaning that it could deal 1 extra damage to the opponent's life. And yeah, it is worth mentioning that this was one of the cover cards of the aforementioned booster pack number 19, hence it being one of the cards that people really want to get, along with his corresponding Sword Brave.
光の青一閃爽快の体験メイルシトロム召喚
To any of our Chinese viewers, do feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this sword might be based off of the Jian, supposed blade of gentlemen, that's also supposed to be a one-handed weapon, but I guess we have to add to that counter. Anyway, while brave, Maelstrom would increase Zoldner's charge, but as we'd see in the next episode, Sora was lacking one more card to complete his ultimate combo that could even result in a full-on deck out, so he decided to play more defensively for now. And playing appropriate to all of these themes about water, Tsurugi followed the flow of the battle and found an opening to strike with his usual combo to win after a pretty awesome exchange between the key spirits. During all of this, he also managed to convince Sora that the boy and his robot genuinely cared for each other, so the episode ended with Sora very willingly accepting the repair job after seeing the love between the two. Again, not gonna use that Symphogear clip. Appropriately, for an episode featuring a water deck, this was a nice bit of a cooldown episode after the intensity of the last one. Whether they're stereotypes or not, I did really enjoy Sora and his family and what they brought to the show. As not only does he have a pretty awesome deck, but Sora and his village provide some pretty important world building for the show. Yeah, it would have been nice if Sora had actually won his first battle, but again, he didn't have an important card, plus he will be getting his win back next time at least. Honestly, I'm not totally sure whether or not Sora and his village were meant to be representations of Chinese immigrants in Japan. I mean, you could certainly read into it as that. Regardless, and more importantly, at least in terms of this show, they did provide some good world building by further establishing the clear class divide that could be seen in the previous episodes. The idea that their very livelihoods were being taken by machines stealing their jobs did make for some good and kind of relatable drama. I mean, really, commentary like this will be a forever issue in our world, where technology is indeed taking over everything. And yet, through Bringer and Tsurugi, they also highlighted a bit of a gray area where embracing droids could also be beneficial. It's a classic sci-fi trope over the debate of artificial intelligence, and is one I actually really like, hence all the Terminator 2 references. Sora himself is a cool character, basically being a super serial mechanic, modeled after, I think, Shaolin monks through his clear conviction for his discipline. His deck also seems like something that would be pretty fun to play in real life, basically relying on deck destruction, but also could fall back on full-on power plays. And while it would have been cool if he had actually won, I mean, I think he would have still done Brinker's repair job either way, it's also not bad that he at least lost to Tsurugi, plus for the sake of selling your product, you should make it clear that even someone using a star deck can win against someone with a booster pack built deck. And overall, this was a good, more grounded episode to reset things after Tsurugi's loss to Yaiba, as well as expanding the world beyond the capital and its effect on the lower classes. AI is certainly a controversial topic these days, but at least there is some genuine love between this boy and his big killer robot. So, after a little delay last week, we should be able to get the last part of the Futari review up this week for sure. We actually had a lot of fun making this series, aside from the little bout with food poisoning, but it shouldn't stop us from getting it done this week. So to look forward to it. Until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and is the background a little off to you? Let me try and fix that. Just ignore that.